Okay, and the final layout type we have in Xamarin Forms is relative layout. Similar to absolute layout, with relative layout, we can overlay elements on top of each other. But relative layout is more powerful than absolute layout because you can apply constraint to position or size of an element relative to another element. So it gives us more control over the position and size of elements. Here's an example. Again, we have an Aqua box view, which is taking about a third of the page. Now we have another box view, which is always 20 units below the Aqua box view. We cannot do something like this with absolute layout, because here we're constraining the position of the silver box view based on the Aqua box view. So it's always 20 units below the Aqua box view. A real-world example of this is user's profile in social networking apps. In a lot of social networking apps, each user profile has what we call a banner or a background image on the top, and then somewhere around here, we have the user's photo. Now in this video, we're not going to do that for simplicity, and that's going to be your exercise later on. So let's see how we can use relative layout to build a user interface like this. So similar to previous lectures, I've got a new page here called relative page, and I've set that as the main page of our application. So we start with relative layout. Now I want to have an Aqua box view, which takes about a third of the page. So box view, color is Aqua. Now here we use one or more attached bindable properties. We've got a few options here. X constraint, Y constraint, width constraint, height constraint, and bounds constraint. I'm going to start with the width constraint. So relative layout, that width constraint. I want the width of this Aqua box view to be exactly the same width as its container, which is in this case relative layout. And by the way, similar to what you have seen before, relative layout automatically stretches to fill the entire page. Now, as the value for width constraint, we use a constraint expression, which is a XAML markup extension. So curly brace, constraint expression, curly brace. This is what we call a XAML markup extension. In the last section, you saw another markup extension, which was binding. So XAML markup extensions are always between curly braces. Now here we need to set a few properties. First one is type. And this property can have two values, and you're going to learn both of them in this lecture. The first one is relative to parent. Now, what property of the parent am I interested in? The width property. So property equals width. Next, we apply a factor. And this basically means the width of this Aqua box view will be the width of its parent multiplied by 1. Next, I want the height of this Aqua box view to be about a third of the height of its parent. So one more time. Relative layout, dot height constraint, curly braces, constraint expression. Again, we set the type to relative to parent. Which property of the parent are we interested in? The height property. Now we need to supply a factor. I'm going to use 0.3. And this means the height of this Aqua box view will be the height of its parent multiplied by 0.3. Let's look at the result. And this is what we get. Now there is nothing special about this layout. We could build the exact same thing using absolute layout. So let me show you where relative layout gets powerful. We want to put a silver box view 20 units below this Aqua box view. So box view, color is silver. Now this time I want to apply a Y constraint. So relative layout, that Y constraint, curly braces, constraint expression. Now this time I'm going to set type to relative to view, because this time I want to apply the Y constraint based on the Aqua box view. And this is something we cannot achieve with absolute layout. We cannot set the position or size of an element based on another element. So type is relative to view. Now, which view? We need an identifier. So first, I'm going to go to this Aqua box view, give it a name using xName attribute. Let's call it banner. Now, back in our silver box view, we need to use another property called element name. And we set this to banner. Next, what property of this banner are we interested in? It's height. Because I want to get that height and add 20 units to it to set the y coordinate of the silver box view. So property is height. Again, we need to set a factor. Factor of 1. And finally, we use the constant property. 20 units. And this means y coordinate of the silver box view will be the height of the banner times 1 plus 20. And by the way, this constant value can be negative. Now let's look at the result. So you see our silver box view is 20 units below the aqua box view. So with relative layout, we can set the position or size of an element based on another element. And this is something we cannot achieve using absolute layout. As you can see from the markup, using relative layout requires writing a bit more code, but you have more control over the position and size of elements. Next, I'm going to show you how to use relative layout in code.